In Palästina und Ostasi und Wiesbaden. Och vi har kastat stenar på. Och vi har kastat stenar på. Soldater och poliser. Soldater och poliser. Och vi har skjutit raketer. Och vi har skjutit raketer. Mot våra fiender. Mot våra fiender. Och hela världen känner till vår kamp. Och hela världen känner till vår kamp. Leve, leve.
Hi, everyone. We will restart now. So thank you for joining us. Very excited to be here. Welcome to our webinar, The People's Resistance Against the War Industry, a webinar for sharing lessons, challenges, and wins from the fight against war profiteering through arms fairs and weapons trade shows. This is an initiative from VITO, one of the sponsoring organizations today, on their way to confront the NEDS Arms Show, which we'll learn about more in a little bit. And it's also part of the Resist US-Led War movement's relaunch of our Cut Ties with War Profiteers campaign. As a network, this campaign aims to unite organizations across the world in exposing and opposing those that profit from US-led war, be it weapons corporations, logistics organizations, or exploitative mining companies, and many more. This happens through propaganda, coordinated actions, and education. We're currently in the process of relaunching the campaign, and we look forward to connecting with more people. So if you're interested in learning more, please reach out to us via email, which is going to be in your chat. So before we begin our program, we would just like to take a moment to say that we're conducting this event in multiple languages, English and French. To ensure that everyone is able to access this webinar program in their preferred language, we would like to provide a few instructions on interpretation. So first we'll review the instructions in English, and then we'll repeat the instructions in French. So at the bottom of your Zoom screen on the right, you should see a small globe. If you press the globe and select the language in which you would like to listen to the webinar, you can choose the language channel for English or French, and you can choose to turn off the original language and just hear the interpretation on your language channel. So everyone here should choose a channel. If you are not speaking, I think I should pause here and allow our French interpreter to say the instructions in French.
Yeah, available, yeah, sure. Donc, si vous êtes là et vous voulez écouter en français, parce que l'événement, justement, la réunion se passera en deux langues, anglais-français. Donc, si vous voulez écouter en français, allez simplement sur l'icône qui ressemble au globe sur votre écran et vous choisissez la langue cible. Donc, si c'est le français, vous mettez le français, et si c'est l'anglais, vous mettez l'anglais.
Thank you very much. All right. And so some other housekeeping reminders. If you're not speaking, please do stay on mute. If the speakers are speaking too fast, and you need them to slow down, you can put the little turtle emoji in the chat to remind them to slow down, especially as we are doing interpretation for this webinar. If you have any technical trouble, please message our tech person, who will be named in the participants list as tech. And if you haven't done so yet, please do choose a language channel, and we will get started in a minute. And then thank you finally to our language justice team for providing interpretation for our program today. So let's get started. For the event today, we have the following agenda. So we'll start with an opening analysis of the current situation of rising fascism and militarization, and how those connect to these weapons shows and expos, which are taking place all over the world, and including in the Netherlands next week, which is what we're building up to today. We'll have a sharing of lessons with specific case studies and campaign experiences from organizations that have targeted the International Paris Air Show at Le Bourget Airport in Paris, France, and the Land Forces International Land Defense Exposition in Australia. This will be followed by question and answer and discussions where we really encourage our participants in this webinar today to offer your own experiences in resisting these arms fairs and arms trade shows around the world. So that'll be our flow for the day. We look forward to the discussion, and I'd like to now pass it on to Vito to provide the political grounding for our webinar. I think I'm calling on Yasmin.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Rhonda, and thank you all for being here. We can go to the next slide. Next slide. Yeah, next slide. And yeah, so I'm going to talk, you can just go back one. I'm going to talk about the current conditions and the necessity to confront arms fairs as part of advancing our anti-imperialist war movement in our localities. And to start with that, we can go to the next slide. I want to look at the state of war today, war and militarism, which is rampant and a huge threat to us all. And I'm going to speed run this a bit because there's a lot to cover when we're talking about this. So with this huge threat against us all, there has been so much that has happened, and especially in the last 5 years. Today, Palestine, the people of Gaza are under a very fragile ceasefire, trying to rebuild. They've withstood 2 years of US-backed Zionist genocide, and which has been consistently supported and armed by our governments. The people of Sudan and Congo are also facing genocide and starvation in wars that are characterized as these civil war conflicts, but really these are fueled by imperialist powers and dominance and the struggle over precious resources in the region. And also these conflicts have a long history that is rooted in European colonialism. We see that the last few weeks, especially, we've been seeing the ramping up of US militarization in the Caribbean, with a growing threat of an attack on Venezuela. And similarly, the US military presence in the South China Sea and in the Philippines has been intensifying because of the so-called threat from China. And the militarization on this level is really in line with the trend of fascism, and it seeps down to our daily lives. We have seen a huge increase in violence in the police in many parts of the world. They are always a violent institution, but under fascism they become more follow a more militarism kind of logic. We saw the protests in Indonesia that were sparked from protests that were already happening when and then a protester who was a worker was killed. We have seen huge repression against those resisting genocide, and we have seen also the so-called war on drugs, which are really wars on the poor. They're happening in Brazil. It's happened in the Philippines, and these are just a model that follows the US model that was started decades ago. And so all of this war and militarism is really part of the trend of fascism that we are seeing. And fascism really breeds a war economy. We can go to the next slide now. So I want to just quickly look at some of the figures that we have, and the rise in military spending. So this year, global military spending reached 2.7 trillion, and this is predicted to reach 6.6 trillion if these trends continue in the next 10 years. NATO members are finally all reaching the 2% guideline, which is something that NATO has been trying to achieve for years. This has increased from only 6 members in 2021. So we can really see that the Russia-Ukraine war has really sparked a lot more military spending. And if we go to the next slide, we can also see that, so NATO also has a 20% expectation that the defense spending is on equipment, which largely translates to weapons. And now we can see that almost every NATO member is reaching that spending. And some of them are really exceeding. Poland and Luxembourg, I mean, especially Luxembourg. Why are you arming so much? Anyhow, so we see this huge increase in spending, and why is that happening? It's not just happening because these countries are suddenly like, oh, we want to spend more on war. It's really been guided. If we go to the next slide, there is a lot of push for this spending by NATO, of course, and in the summit in The Hague, they managed to agree to increase the defense expectation from 2% to 5%. They also have been very supportive of proposals of the EU around simplification procedures to make production easier and a smoother process with less administration. Another thing I want to point out is that these budget increases are also very much in line with US interests, and Trump in his recent visit to Asia Pacific managed to reach agreements with Japan, Taiwan, and South Korea for increasing their military budgets, and made agreements with Malaysia for them to purchase more Boeing products. And I also really want to emphasize the role of the EU in this, because the EU is just espousing just a message of militarization. And they have a plan that is very creatively called Rearm Europe. And it exactly is what it sounds like. It's a plan for rearmament of Europe, where they are going to free up 800 billion euros for defense investment. And they, in their reports about this, they consistently use the word unleash all this money. And it's very threatening, actually. So there is this huge war thinking. Now we can, if we go to the next slide, we can see how this is affecting the war industry. We see that companies are thriving, especially European defense companies, they're really trying to give them more vigor now. And this speculation is just causing more people to invest in them. And people are getting excited. People in the war industry, they're like, hey, time for us to make some money. Because our economies are increasingly being planned around war, there's just a huge growth in the industry. And bear in mind that all of these trillions of dollars are just being siphoned away from social services, because the increase in military spending has to come from somewhere. And NATO addresses are continuously steeped with this language about the people making sacrifices. And it's not just like people's lives that they expect to sacrifice, but just even our basic like services. We can go to the next slide. Wait, before that, I just want to say, this is the reality that we are in, of this huge increase in arms companies being a thriving industry. And this is a huge opportunity. We can go to the next slide. So we are here in the Netherlands confronting the Neds arms fair. But what are really are arms fair? These are playgrounds for war profiteers. Arms fairs are opportunities for weapons companies, government officials, and military representatives to come together and, you know, just make sales. They're also spaces to strengthen the relationship between business and government. They're often government sponsored, such as the NED that is put on by the NIDV, which is the Dutch lobby, the Dutch military lobby, which is part business owned and part part government run. And these arms fairs often also are spaces where the government and industry officials give talks and projections are made about future security threats. And there are also spaces to guide, where guidance is given to the market. And they emerged in the 1990s, you know, when neoliberal globalization was at its, you know, really dawn of like taking over the world. So these marketplaces are just really leading, like allow for the normalization of war and war markets. We can go to the next slide. So when I was reading some of the reports about arms fairs from people who visit them, like in a critical way, they really talk about how strange it is, how disconnected these spaces are from the reality of what they're really selling. They talk about how attendees are chatting and drinking their tea and coffee, later on champagne and eating canapes, but it's around a tank. So it's a very bizarre way that these spaces, which are selling deadly weapons, are kept very clean and very far away from what is actually being traded, which is like, it's the sale of death. And we can also see in some of these pictures, like the peace in the world, that one on the bottom right is from some Turkish company, which is very strange. It's just a very bizarre how these weapon fairs are occurring is just covering up the criminality of them. We can go to the next slide. And so we are saying no to this. As Veto, our first point of action is to resist imperialist wars. And arms fairs are the marketplace of imperialist wars. So we have a duty to confront this when it's in our backyard. And specifically for us here in the Netherlands, in the context of NEDs, it's particularly grotesque that such an event takes place where it does. In Rotterdam Zuid, which is the poorest neighborhood in Rotterdam, which is the most disadvantaged city in the Netherlands. And Rotterdam Zuid is the neighborhood where youth are really targeted for recruitment. So you have this place in Rotterdam Ahoy, all of these weapons are being sold, where these people who wear suits who will be never be close to the reality of these wars. And you know, in that neighborhood is where the army recruits youth. These weapons, these weapon shows are really tangible targets for us to build campaigns around and confront. I think you'll see from the following presentations how creative we can get, how they can be used for mass education, and really a way to bring people together to confront this. We're in a world where war is ever increasing, where we're facing fascism, and our resistance is being ever more repressed. And confronting the war industry is a really, really important thing for us to do. And it's often met with a very fascist response. And before I end, I just want to take a moment to express solidarity with the Palestine actionists in the UK, the Filton 24, many of whom are undertaking a hunger strike. Elbit Systems is a genocidal company, which has played a key role in the genocide. And their factories have been attacked, and the UK government has chosen to criminalize its own people and label them as terrorists. And all solidarity with those who are fighting this, and all solidarity with all of those who are really, really confronting and standing with people who are making big sacrifices to disrupt the war machine. I am going to end there. I think we have a lot to discuss today, and I'm really looking forward to people sharing your experiences about confronting arms fairs and other parts of the war industry. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Yasmin, Comrade Yasmin from Vito, for sharing such a sharp analysis of the current situation regarding the war machine, and for highlighting the urgency of fighting the increasing militarization led principally by the US-led war machine and its NATO allies. I want to also add that hello, I am co-emceeing this webinar today with Comrade Rhonda. My name is Aletta. I am with Vito also, and I am based in the Netherlands. Okay, to go back, not wanting to take up too much of your precious time. We will move to action and campaign sharing from Galag and Bayan Australia, organizations and alliances that are at the very forefront of the fight against weapon shows in their countries, which have mobilized thousands to confront these weapon fairs. So first up, we will hear from Galag. Lil is the spokesperson for the Ger à la Guerre Coalition, or Galag, an alliance of anti-fascist, anti-racist, radical ecologist, and pro-Palestinian forces that is building an anti-militarist movement in France through on-the-ground mobilization and large demonstrations. So I would like to hand the floor to Lil. Thank you so much already for speaking.
Hi, everyone. You can go to the next slide, I think. My name is Lil. And I'm going to be the spokesperson for Guerre à la Guerre, which means war against war or war on war, which is actually a Luxembourgist or quote, Luxembourg quote, which means to wage war against your own governing class and not against the proletariat of the other countries. And that was the inspiration of the movement, because we did not want to do something that was in the same very peaceful and kind of boring demonstration for pacifist movement in France that was happening in the last years, which led actually to a deflation of the anti-militarist movement in France. So we wanted to do something that would be a bit more appealing, but also a bit stronger, especially in the context that Yasmin reminded us of. And so many organizations, some say 20, some say more, decided to join forces. You can go to the next slide. Decided to join forces in the coalition that we called Galag. I think you can go to the next slide if it's possible. And we decided to try and build, as was thankfully said by Aletta, a huge demonstration that would be the starting point of a renewal of the anti-militarist movement in France, which was quite weak. We could discuss about why the anti-militarist movement is weak in France. I think it's especially important to remind people that France is an imperialist country on its own, and has this retelling of being not as much under the influence of the US as other countries. And because of this, and not as much as under the influence of NATO as other countries, especially in the Western world. And well, we could discuss about this in much more depth, but what was the what we've seen was that it was too weak, and because of this, we decided to do a huge demonstration with many different forces. You can go to the next slide. And we decided to target the International Paris Air Show, which is a week-long arms show in June. It happens every 2 years, and it's one of the biggest in the world. The arms fair it's not called an arms fair. It's called an air show because it focuses only on planes and rockets and all this kind of stuff. It's basically one of the biggest show of influence of the French imperialist machine, but it's totally not controlled. But the companies that are making deals in this kind of show are from every country. Even though Russia was forbidden to go there once after the invasion of Ukraine, but apparently it does not apply to Israel, for example. So more than 48 countries were represented, and it counts in billions of it represents billions of contracts every year. And it was the start of our campaign. That allows me to go to the next slide and to highlight maybe the main strategy and the main strength of Guerre à la Guerre, which was to do something as wide as possible and setting realistic goals. We knew that we couldn't stop the event itself or prevent contracts from being signed, but we wanted to challenge the impunity of death tellers and to put that topic on the media and on political agendas. And I think that was maybe the biggest win of our movement. The idea was also to be as wide as possible. I will detail in just a minute what was the structure of our coalition. But the idea was to do something as wide as possible, especially when we try to have contact with the more institutional left. It's maybe something that wouldn't be possible in other countries because you don't have maybe a strong left parties that would be able to get involved with those kind of mobilization. But in France, we have the, I don't know if it's a luck or if it's just the reality that we have La France Insoumise, which is a movement that is from the parliamentary left and that we tried to influence and to get involved with us in order to influence their political agenda. And this width is also in trying to involve unions that wouldn't be as much against the military-industrial complex as one would want, especially because in France the industry is still strong and is still providing jobs. So that was also a question of width. And as I said in the beginning, and as was said in the presentation of the coalition, the idea was also to create a strong dynamic between different forces that have different tactics. So intervention, like direct intervention, trying to have also other tactics like lawsuits, trying to. Is everything okay? Yasmin? No, okay. Sorry. If there is any question, if I'm not being really clear, it's okay to call me out. So the idea was to do something as wide as possible with unions, some political parties, but also people from outside the like political sphere, trying to reach out as wide as possible of a movement, because the arm fair is, and you can go to the next slide, is having a clean look. It's even though it's being as I said, the incarnation of an imperialist collusion of what we call the inbreeding between state and security or defense contractors, like for us, Thales, Dassault, Safran. It still has a very good image. It's called an air show because people go there to just like watch the planes and have a fun time, and because of this, we try to show that it was actually a unifying target, as Yasmin said, in the context of the rise of fascism. This kind of event is also where every force get together to build more fascism, more militarization, and work against the people. And that's why we tried to show this. So it gave us an opportunity actually to take concrete action from where we are. It was, as Yasmin said, it's being done near one of the poorest area in France, in Seine-Saint-Denis. So it materializes the inequalities in France, but it's also the representation of the influence that France and other Western countries have on, for example, the creation of conditions where people are forced out of their homes and then policed when they try to go to the countries in the West. So the state and this kind of air show create the context in which weapons and those technology will be used. The state then use them or sell them to other countries in overseas territories, or for example, in other countries. For example, what's happening in Sudan right now is being done with the help of the French military industrial complex. And then the same weapons, those same companies are making money in the repression and in the policing of the people that try and come to France, for example. So exactly, yeah. It's also those same technologies are used also in surveillance. Right now, what's happening in France, and we could talk about this a bit later, is Milipol, which is a weapons, an arms fair, but just about surveillance technologies and like repression technologies, more about police than about the army. And as showed in the slide, what we tried to show, especially in this context, was that the Paris Air Show was also involved in and complicit in genocide, because Israel and other warring states were present. I think you can go to the next slide. So we tried to do something, and what happened was quite a success. It was more than 3,000 people that were there in front of the arms fair, which was very successful because in 2023 for the last arm fair, there was only like 10 people in front of the fair, so it was quite a success. And we did it thanks to this like this wide array of tactics. We had like 3 different spaces that we intertwined in order to attack, with big air quotes, to attack the arms fair. First was the Galag Coalition, so what we described, different groups from the anti-fascist movement, anti-racist movement, people from like more radical ecology, so Soulèvement de la Terre, this kind of organization, and pro-Palestinian movement like Urgence Palestine, for example, that were together in order to build and to really put energy in this mobilization. And then a second dynamic, which we call Stop Bourget, with more traditional actors of the social movement. So that meant trade unions, political parties, some non-profit organizations, which allowed for political representatives to push for our administrative needs. For example, it was a trade union that asked for the demonstration to take place, and also it forced those actors to take a stance on the holding of this arms fair. And in order to do this, we had to find the 3 smallest common factors, and it was 1, standing against the genocide in Gaza, which meant that we put pressure, especially on the presence of Israeli companies in the arms show. Second, standing against war business, weapon selling, and it was especially appealing to the left party that I talked about before, the La France Insoumise. And 3, standing against war economy and austerity, because as Yasmin said, the rise of the military budget means austerity for other areas of the welfare state. So it was a combination of internationalist and domestic social fights, which allowed us to build this wider force that involved people that wouldn't be as anti-militarist or anti-imperialist as they should be. And it was really, really helpful because it was the biggest demonstration in years, those actors really had to be even more involved with us, and which we built an alliance that wants to last. And the third level of the third space that we intertwined, so the Galag Coalition, the Stop Bourget mobilization with other parties, was a lawsuit that we launched. We launched 2 lawsuits against the company that organizes the arms fair, in order to make the French justice system recognize that huge contract would be signed and would make up an act of genocidal complicity. So we created a volunteer-based group to conduct research and link companies to war crimes, with two lawsuits. First, one lawsuit about companies that involved in the genocide in Gaza, and one lawsuit about companies that do not respect sanctions in Ukraine and Sudan. We wanted to show that, for example, the Ukraine war was also a big opportunity for the French military-industrial complex on the side of Ukraine, for sure, but also on the side of Russia, because they sell weapons to Russia, they sell weapons to Ukraine. The idea is just to create a conflict in order to make money. I think, yes, you can go to the next slide, thank you. Before the main date, we tried to organize public presentations in different cities around France. We created some public event kits to help local branches of the members of the coalition to organize events with the main political messages and resources. I don't know, we did happenings, and we tried to raise money and gain visibility in order to do something huge on the D-Day. And during the arms fair, we did a 3-day anti-war village. Yes, that's true. And we could talk about the anti-merch action and the link between Cœur à la Guerre and unions later. But I have to move on because I'm already late and taking too much time. So we organized a 3-day anti-war village with workshops, conferences that were really like dedicated to discuss concrete action with international guests. And we tried to also, in order to appeal to other people that weren't really like involved in the anti-war movement, we did a concert with the famous rappers. Well, all of them are French, so you probably don't know them, but people that are quite famous. And that allowed us to do this huge march that was during a heat wave that was absolutely killing us. Many comrades that are a bit older couldn't come because it was too warm and basically impossible to withstand for some people. But we couldn't do everything that we planned to do. We were looking for something that was simple, could massify the mobilization, without putting any vulnerable comrades in danger, especially people that are undocumented, for example. And so we try to symbolically retake the airs, and that's why there are some balloons on the screen. It was planned to take the sky back with an air balloon procession that could maybe, I don't know, be released in the air at some point, and that would maybe disrupt. That could be possible that it would have disrupted the arms fair, even though we did not want it that, but it could have happened. And because of this, the police came in, and that's the picture on the screen. The police came and was really a heavy police operation with military police that came and went in the Union Center where we were located, and destroy all of the balloons that were being filled. So the repression has been quite strong. We have, and if you want to give some money to the people that are being attacked in justice, it's possible. And at the same time, even though the biggest action was impossible to make because of this repression, yes, I'm basically done. Because the biggest thing was impossible to make, but thankfully many other groups of people not directly linked to Galag made something happen, even though it was symbolical. Some people threw paint at Le Bourget train station. Other people made a die-in inside. And in that sense, it showed that the anti-militarist movement is getting stronger in France, because people are just looking at this kind of event and try to do stuff. You can go to the next slide. Now, the last what are the effects of this campaign? This campaign wasn't an absolute success. The arms fair took place, and we had a few successes. First, the French government announced that 5 Israeli companies would not be allowed to open their exhibition stands. because the French government said that there's a rule preventing exhibitors to display attacking weapons, and only defensive weapons are allowed. It's completely bullshit, but it shows that our action can put pressure on those kind of on the government, for example, and try to make it more complicated for the arms fair to take place. Right now, other war-on-war initiatives are being created in different cities in France and in different European countries. So the idea is to create networks within our political sphere, more like revolutionary organization, and with other political parties. Those networks that were built are still going strong and are being useful right now in order to fight against the other arms fair that I talked about before, Milipol, which is being fought against thanks to the help of other political forces that are outside of the coalition. But we had also troubles, and we should have been more careful in terms of police repression. Thankfully, we work with a very efficient legal team, and I think it's the last thing that I would say is that it's really a big asset to have allied jurists and lawyers, especially that, for example, the lawsuit was really helpful in order to make some more public stances. So that's maybe an advice that I would give to people. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, and otherwise I'm done.
I want to say thank you, Lil, for such an inspiring sharing. And I have so many, as a jurist, I have so many questions about the lawsuit, but I'll keep that to a later stage. So now we will hear from Alexia from Bayan, Australia. Alexia Fuentes is the Secretary General of Bayan, Australia. She is a Filipina trans woman and activist born in the Philippines and now based in Sydney, Australia. She previously served as the chairperson of the Filipino youth mass organization Anak Bayan, Melbourne. Alexia is deeply involved in the National Democratic Movement, fighting for genuine national democracy in the Philippines. So take it away, Alexia.
Thank you, Aletta. So hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this important discussion. Today, I'll be presenting the report from Bayan Australia on the Disrupt Land Forces campaign. So Bayan Australia, or Bagong Alyansang Makabayan Australia, is the multi-sectoral coalition of Filipino mass organizations in Australia fighting for national democracy in the Philippines against imperialism, bureaucrat capitalism, and feudalism. So this is a crucial moment for us to examine how we can effectively challenge the status quo in defense and arms exhibitions. Next slide, please. Sorry, next slide. Yeah, thank you. So the Disrupt Land Forces campaign was initiated by various organizations together with Disrupt Wars and many other anti-war groups. I know there were many collectives and organizations that were involved in this as well, including the Disrupt Land Forces Loose Coalition campaign network itself, with a shared goal to oppose the Land Forces Expo in Australia. This event is not just a showcase of modern weapon systems, but a hub for defense contracts and arms deals, attended by delegations from numerous countries. So our focus here is to rethink and disrupt these traditional narratives around militarism and defense. And as we delve into the details of this campaign, we must also consider how diverse groups came together under a unified purpose. This collaboration is a testament to the power of solidarity across borders. Next slide, please. So today we'll be diving into the core elements of the campaign against the Land Forces Expo, primarily the role played by the Unite and Resist Imperialist Wars, Oppose Militarism in Asia-Pacific campaign network within the broader DLF, and the Filipino contingent at these protests led by Bayan Australia. because this was the main campaign machinery we utilized during this time. So we will largely focus on that. But vis-a-vis with the broader campaign and issue as well, of course. Perhaps we will hear from our comrades from Disrupt Wars, ILPS Australia, or No AUKUS Vic, if they are here, how they would like to share more details about the main protests that were able to mobilize around 25,000 people to confront this expo. But let's start by outlining our key components. So first, we'll cover the campaign objectives. These objectives are crucial as they guide our actions and strategies throughout the campaign. Next, we have the target audience. Understanding who our message is intended for allows us to tailor our approach effectively, consider who we want to engage and influence through our actions. Then we delve into the propaganda that we also used. This refers to the various methods employed to spread our message and rally support. Following that, we'll look at the mobilization itself. So this involves the efforts to gather support and participation from the masses, increasing our campaign's impact. And finally, we'll discuss the results. Reflecting on how the campaign objectives were achieved provides insights into our success and lessons for the future. So as we explore each of these elements, we need to think about how they collectively contribute to the campaign's overall effectiveness. Next slide, please. So the Land Forces Expo happened around the growing momentum of pro-Palestine protests, as well as during the height, if we can call it that, of the Israeli offensives and genocide in Palestine. So this expo has ties with weapons companies, including Elbit, Boeing, Thales, Lockheed Martin, Hanwha, which is a South Korean company, and many others. So companies that have been involved in profiteering from the genocide in Palestine, but these are also the same companies we now find that are dealing with the Philippine government. So the same Israeli weapons are ending up at the hands of Philippine state security forces, especially during the brutal war on drugs under the fascist Duterte regime and continuing today under the US Marcos regime. And they are being used against Filipino activists, human rights defenders, climate activists, indigenous communities, and revolutionaries. And we know for a fact as well that not only are they profiteering from the genocide in Palestine, but they are also ending up in many other countries with fascist regimes that are used to employ against their own citizens. So within the broader and wider loose coalition of organizations around Disrupt Land Forces, a loose campaign network was also launched to target the growing militarism in Asia Pacific, which is the Unite and Resist Imperialist Wars Oppose Militarism in Asia Pacific loose campaign network. Next slide, please. Thank you. So in the lead up to the major DLF mobilization, the Multilateral Campaign Network launched a rally that drew between 90 to 100 people in front of the Melbourne Convention and Exhibition Center, where the Land Forces Expo was held the next day. Filipino mass organizations and solidarity networks held a mock people's court indicting the Land Forces Expo participants guilty of international war crimes, including Marcos Jr. himself, Biden, Albanese, and Netanyahu, among those charged with war crimes. Next slide. So in the target audience, we were able to mobilize among the Filipino compatriot organizations and multisectoral communities, migrant workers, youth, women, queer people, indigenous voices, and professionals, but also among the multilateral solidarity networks and alliances. We had refugees, Palestinian activists, Aboriginal communities, trade unions, human rights networks, and international students who also joined us. And we basically addressed towards the Philippine state from on our part, and also the Australian government, and of course, US imperialism itself. Next slide. And also we conducted various types of propaganda, including leafletting, social media, banner making, cultural performances, effigy making, and creative protests in the form of a mock people's court. So if you can see the picture on the screen, there's a huge effigy sort of cardboard with the painting on it with Marcos, Biden, and I think that's Duterte. We were originally intending to burn that at the protest site, but we were prevented by the police because we were outnumbered by the cops during that rally. So we ended up just smashing and hitting it with flags and sticks and stepping on them and jumping on them to, express our rage and frustration with the US imperialism and the fascist regime in the Philippines. Next slide, please. Thank you. I think that's just some photos. So these are some of the photos from the rally. Next slide. Yeah. So in the major protests during the 3-day convention from September 11th to 13th, the Filipino Youth Mass Organization, Anak Bayan Melbourne, which is a member organization of Bayan Australia, was mainly the one that led the smaller Filipino contingent, apart from the activities in the lead up to the Land Forces Expo. But we witnessed the state violence and police brutality that was deployed against the protesters. So the rallies leading up to the DLF itself, there were various mobilizations throughout I think a week or 2 weeks ahead of the expo itself. And during the major mobilization itself, during the 3 days, we were able to draw like 25,000 demonstrators, according to official estimates, gathered outside the Melbourne Convention Exhibition Center. And the demonstration was met with police brutality, tear gas, pepper spray. We also had horseback police charging at protesters and various other anti-people tactics. And this is what you can see also on the screen in the photo there. These are just some of the organizations that joined the major DLF campaign, the Disrupt Land Forces campaign. Next slide, please. Just some of the photos and some of the burning materials that you can see here were basically the pent-up rage of the people that were, being repressed throughout the several protests leading up to this. Next slide. Yep. And here you can see how the police responded with the demonstrations. The Victorian government also had to import police forces from the state of New South Wales just to make up for the major police operation to confront and repress the protests. You can see here how they were deploying their capsicum sprays or pepper sprays. And like I said earlier, they were also using horseback police to charge at protesters. There were a lot of injuries recorded during these demonstrations and a lot of arrests. Next slide, please. So, but the result of this is that when Land Forces Expo was held in Melbourne in September, it was a major demonstration. So after the protest, the Victorian government actually reviewed its budget and overspending in policing the massive demonstrations and protests. So there are also ongoing investigations in the illegal arrests and human rights violations. The organizers of the Land Forces Expo are looking to relocate the venue for Land Forces Expo 2026 to Western Australia. Because the original Land Forces Expo was in Queensland, which was also met with protests, and then in Victoria, which was met with major protests as well. So now every time that they are met with resistance, they are trying to move locations to a different venue where they least expect resistance. But I know that people are already mobilizing on the ground to confront them in Western Australia as well. The organizers, so in the recent days, just this November, a recent Defend Philippine Sovereignty Against Foreign Military Intervention, which is an anti-imperialist campaign, is also being launched in coordination with Bayan Australia, ILPS Australia, and others to condemn US, Australian, and other foreign military presence in the Philippines this month of November 2025. We are aware that there is increasing US and Australian military presence in the Philippines amidst escalating tensions with China in the West Philippine Sea. So back-to-back joint military exercises between the US, Australia, and the Philippines are being conducted more regularly annually. Apart from the growing US presence, we have also seen more ADF presence as of late this year. So ADF is the Australian Defence Force, basically the Australian Army. So this discussion is very important in exposing imperialism and war profiteering, and which it cannot have come any sooner. So that's basically my brief presentation. We can probably tackle some of the questions during the discussion Q&A part. I'll just leave you with the video on the last slide. just a quick snippet of the protest outside the Melbourne Convention Center the night before the 3-day expo.
These arms dealers sell weapons and military equipment to fascist regimes who commit war crimes in occupied Palestine, West Papua, and the Philippines. US-backed, US-funded, Israeli-made, and Australian-made machines of mass destruction are being auctioned off to warmongering fascists and dictators who are salivating for more blood. The killings of activists, bombings of peasant and indigenous communities, and the continuing repression of the Filipino people at the hands of the Philippine military are being enabled, bankrolled, and supported by US imperialism and Australian junior imperialism. Shame!
Duwal sa panahon ng nakapanibing kalayaan, nakakahon sa makasariling kabanalan, bulag sa pagkahari-harian, tamad manindigan, tamad mga tuwiran.
Are we gonna let land forces go unopposed? Are we gonna let them parade and sell the weapons that they use on the world's poorest people? Are we gonna let them know that we will mobilize in our thousands and millions against the imperialist war machine wherever it goes? How many more deaths in Gaza and all corners of the world must we see to stop our taxes from being used to fund genocide?
Australia has a lot of work to do towards decolonisation, and we've seen that with the Free Palestine movement. Many people are only questioning now, why is it that Australia continues to stand with Israel?
Pagmasdan ang bayan, kayamanan ang nasasakupan, nasaan ang katarungan, panay sakahan may katutuman, sa lawak ng lupa ba't may mga walang matirhan, kahit matyaga walang mapala, natalikala, nasa hirap na di maibsan, hukag ang pag-ulad na sasabayanan ay humahati, at pagdahilan ng pagkakatangian ay pagtapak sa nakararami, pagkat sa dating ay gakas ang karinyo, pagmulat ay pagkasa, tayo ang gatilyo.
All right. Thank you so much to Alexia and Bion Australia for ending your presentation on such a high note. I think I'm seeing a ton of emojis, lots of excitement, lots of love in the chat, and actually a lot of questions starting to come up too. I think people are very inspired by both Lil's and Alexia's presentations from the experiences of Galag in France and Bion Australia in opposing these weapons expos. So we won't, delay much further our chance to discuss and share, ask more questions, and kind of deepen our understanding of the lessons from these experiences in opposing the war profiteers at these weapons expos. So just to get us ready for it, I think wanted to share that this webinar really came out of the desire to increase these campaigns against war profiteers like the arms industry, the arms corporations. And recently, Resist US-Led War Network convened several organizations that have been conducting protests against these weapons shows. So we convened organizations from France, Australia, the US, Malaysia, Canada, and more, because there are shows all over the world and more organizations opposing them. Convened these organizations to share lessons and experiences from the events. So from these conversations, we were able to then kind of design this webinar and collect some synthesized lessons and hopefully provide a venue for more sharing across the world. So Resist US-Led War Movement is continuing our own path to relaunch our Cut Ties with War Profiteers campaign. And so, hopefully after this webinar, more of you will be interested and inspired to take on the war profiteers and get involved in the campaign. And if you're interested, just let us know in the chat and we'll reach back out to you. Just to kind of summarize some of the lessons that were shared by Galag and Bion, and then other organizations that we brought together last month to talk about this issue. What we heard is, so one, it's really important to build coalitions and unite with all forces possible against the narrowest target. So in this example, the weapons shows or specific weapons companies or Israeli companies that are exhibiting in these shows, et cetera. Do this while linking to the broader issues of militarism and imperialism in order to mobilize people in large numbers and really grow the movement. We should make broad calls that allow for mass involvement of the people and a broad range of tactics. So linking the day-to-day issues of the people living under governments that prioritize militarization and the spending of billions and even up to $1 trillion in the United States over paying for services that serve people's needs. So these kinds of linking of these day-to-day issues to the war machine really agitate people to take up the fight via different tactics. So we heard about mass protests, we heard about direct action, we heard about cultural work, we heard about legal action. Those are just some of them. There could be many more. Another lesson is that we need to expose state repression as an alignment of government forces to war against the people's demands and expose that the government is really complicit in propping up the war machine. And then use research, so people's research that expose the impacts of the companies, and then use that to produce propaganda, use that to make mass education that can help bring more and more people into the fight and then gives more power to our actions against the targets. So arm ourselves with research and information. And then another, really key thing is to be very integrated in the communities. And in doing that, integrated in communities that are feeling the impacts, it helps us gather intelligence about the targets that we are aiming at. So for example, engineering students in a university receiving emails inviting them to these employment fairs, these job fairs that the weapons corporations are going to be presenting at. So engineering students find out about that months in advance before there's any kind of public announcement and can be part of our networks that then plan a campaign to either block those arms companies from coming in the first place or protest them when they do come. So these are just a few of some of the lessons that we heard across the different sharings and that we hope to build on with the rest of our discussion today. So with that, we are going to move into our question and answer discussion section. I know there were a couple of questions already in the chat earlier, which we started to collate, which we can take some time to answer here, but we also wanted to give time to folks now to share about your own campaigns against the war corporations, the war industry and profiteers. So if you do have that question or would like to share, please feel free to raise your hand or place your question in the chat. And I think for this portion, I'm turning it over to our co-MC, Aletta, to help facilitate.
Okay, yes, my apologies. Okay, so as we've been hearing these very inspiring stories, we have been looking over questions that we received in the chat. I think it would be interesting to touch back on the question that was asked about the Maersk campaign. I think it was let's see, the anti-Maersk actions led by PYM showed how coordinated worker activist pressure can disrupt the logistics backbone of militarism. So what are the prospects for anti-militarism movements in Europe and Australia to build similar cross-border coalitions capable of sustained coordinated actions that can pressure war profiteers? So I think, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but I think this is aimed at, all speakers essentially in this webinar. So Whoever feels like they can share or have a response, please jump in.
Well, I could talk about what's happening in France about this.
Yes, please do.
The anti-mask actions in France do take place, even though they are more, I would say, decentralized. What has already happened has been dock workers, so more like quick strikes in the logistics sectors against the carrying of, for example, weapons or different things that was sent to Israel. It has happened especially in Marseille, in the south of France, because Marseille is on the road of the boats that are taking weapons to Israel. Those boats are going from Haifa in Israel to Genova, and then Marseille, Barcelona, and then in Morocco, and then back to Israel. And in all those places, there has been a strong mobilization from the dock workers against the transportation of goods toward Israel. For the moment, it's essentially about military grade stuff. So not as much all the goods, but rather just about weapons and armament. But hopefully we could expand those kind of initiatives to a broader disinvestment of Israel. I think in Italy, it's around Genova, especially. It's called the CALP, which is an autonomous collective of dock workers that really managed to disrupt the transportation of goods to Israel.
Well, thank you so much for sharing, Lil. I learned a lot there.
I'm Steph. I'm from ILPS Australia, but with what Alexia shared earlier, ILPS in coordination with also ILPS Asia Pacific last time with the land forces with land forces, and what we did was we did a webinar about the arms the arms hold on, let me just check what the title of it is. So we did a webinar about exposing the Postal Land Forces 2024, and we titled it Murderers Exposed. So this is a hybrid webinar about delving into the International Land Defense Exposition. And there were different organizations that were involved in it. This is also in coordination with Bayan and Resist back in September 2024. So that was one of the things that that we did with the land forces coordination as well. So I think there are still a lot of things that we can do. We still need to do a lot of research into the different arms manufacturers. I think also the unions in Australia also have a lot of information and hand on with the different companies that manufacture arms. That's something that we need to also look at because I think that it is very important that workers be united in exposing and opposing these manufacturers. So I think this is a good venue as well to talk about that and to really delve deeper into those connections with those different organizations and how we can work together to be able to expose them.
Thank you so much for sharing stuff. I feel like I learned a lot. I was also wondering if you're open to another question from me. If not, feel free to let me know. But what I saw and what I thought was interesting in the French context with Galag is that it seemed to be mentioning radical ecologist groups, pro-Palestinian groups, but also a political party. And I was wondering whether in Australia it is also possible to have like a meaningful parliamentary left to collaborate with, or was that not really an option for any of you?
Not sure who would you like to answer first?
I aimed at any of the comrades who were involved in organizing in Australia with this event. So Alexia, you're more than welcome to address.
I guess I'll go ahead first with the question about parliamentary struggle in terms of how we can combat these war profiteering industry. We did have allies in the Australian Parliament in terms of with the Greens, the Australian Greens. We actually had a couple of speakers from them as well at our rallies, particularly former Australian Senator Janet Rice from the Greens, who spoke at some of our rallies, condemning the U.S. imperialism and the Australian involvement in the military exercises in the Philippines. And she also protested Marcos during one of his visits in the Australian Parliament, which led to her getting kicked out of Parliament, but later on joined the protest outside Canberra. But there is a lot of what I call this avenues for us to work together on, whether it's parliamentary or on the streets, or on social media even, that we can all tie together and to link and raise all of these issues from Palestine to the Philippines to West Papua and now to Sudan. There's a lot of collaboration and sharing that we can all I think benefit from. And yes, definitely we can from our lessons throughout this discussion, a broader and wider discussion among different groups from different sectoral organizations, whether you're environmental activists or an anti-war activist. There's always a room for us to link up and build a wider and stronger anti-imperialist movement that can actually combat and confront this warmongering imperialist powers. And like I mentioned earlier during my presentation, the presence of US and Australian troops in the Philippines, which are also increasing. We are now calling out on the Australian government to cut its ties with the Marcos government, to stop its Australian military aid that it's sending to the Philippines, which it remains to what I call this, it lacks transparency, basically. Like, it doesn't want to disclose how much it's giving the Marcos government. But recently we just discovered that it just sent a new aid package to the Philippine government amidst the ongoing typhoon in the Philippines as a disaster relief package. But we know that with the ongoing issues in the Philippines, especially the issues that we have exposed in relation to the ongoing corruption in the Philippine government, we know where this is going to be going towards, and it's not going to benefit the Filipino people. It's just going to escalate the tensions, the armed conflict in our region, in Asia Pacific, as well as around the world. So we must be able to identify these, these sites of resistance, and also wherever these multinational corporations of weapons manufacturers and the U.S. government and Australian government are scheming to manufacture more conflicts around the world to benefit their geopolitical interests. We must be able to expose them and oppose them wherever they go.
Thank you so much for sharing, Alexia. As you were speaking, I also noticed that Rhonda raised their hand, so I would like to give her the word for now.
Thanks, Aletta. I was just thinking to respond to that earlier question about the anti-Maersk actions and how, what are the prospects for this anti-militarism building of a movement across different countries, cross-border coalitions. So I think that's part of the point of the Cut Ties campaign, is to actually identify these shared targets. And it could be a shared target like Maersk or Boeing or another one, but actually put pressure on the company all along the supply chain. So, there's a lot of points at which we can conduct action to disrupt the production of, say, a Boeing plane or someone that's manufacturing drones. It goes from the extraction in a place like India for minerals to all the way to the production factories all over the world to the final product at the end, which gets sold to different governments. So there's all these different places where many of us around the world could actually be taking action to have governments cut ties with these corporations, universities cut ties with these corporations, and build solidarity with one another against a shared target as we each take action locally against one place that can disrupt the whole thing. But it does take kind of this sharing like we're doing now, sharing of information, of research, and then coordination of action. Yeah, we're excited that we can come together in a venue like this to start that kind of sharing. And not only of like the target and its weaknesses, but also the different tactics that people are taking to expose and oppose the target. So hopefully we can kind of continue with this, and the anti-Maersk campaign that Palestinian Youth Movement undertook is a really good example within actually kind of a short amount of time to gain real wins against a corporation involved in the logistics handling aspect of the war machine. So I think it'd be good to even study the lessons that came out of that and apply them to our own campaigns. Thanks.
Yeah, I definitely also think that we have a lot to learn from each other, and that I think what you just said, Rhonda, about hitting them essentially all along the supply chain is something that hits on really nicely with another question that I saw mentioned in the chat by Comrade Lil from Vito. They mentioned that a big percentage of the companies in NEDS are also consultancies or AI companies who work not only with defense, but also with education and tech. And at the moment, this trivialization of war is being used in media as a way to dismiss our protests. This is something we noticed in the Netherlands, since weapons are also cybersecurity, or they are also presented as a means of innovation. And I think the question Lil was asking is, among these supply chains, are there not opportunities for us to create more alliances with teachers and students and administrators who are forced to use software for those military contracts? And I think it's really interesting, Lil, what you said, because it also touches on, I think, both Alexia and Lil from Galag both mentioned that they had to use, a lot of research to uncover these corporate ties, and they worked with people who have different expertise. So yeah, I think, if I'm being correct, Lil, please correct me if I'm wrong, that this is a question also aimed at all of the speakers. How do we use these types of alliances with teachers and students and administrators?
I'm just gonna jump in because I was already thinking about this question as Rhonda was speaking, because I think I definitely, Leo, I think that this is an important point for us to push because I think in my presentation I tried to like touch on how militarization is happening on all levels of society, and this is included in education and academic spaces, and they really try to sanitize this, especially in tech schools. Here, TU Delft, Eindhoven universities are just, they have special contracts with Lockheed Martin to send interns and fresh graduates off there to be completely incorporated into the war industry. And to hide this behind like innovation is really just dirty. It's dirty because this is just as I said, like in Rotterdam Zuid, that neighborhood, the youth are targeted into recruitment, but our youth who are in academic spaces, who are more middle class, are targeted into like producing knowledge and research to advance the war industry. And I think that most people, I think that we can get through to most people in these spaces because war is a disgusting thing and most people don't like it. These are, we have to get them before they are part of this, integrated into the system. So I think that the more creative our alliances can become, I think that's great. I mean, from back like a decade ago, in universities there was big campaigns to boycott HP because HP, the computer manufacturer, has been used in Israeli prison systems and other things, and this has always been a target of the BDS, and on campuses it really was used. Same with G4S, which is a security company. And I think the more ways we can see where these kinds of companies are being normalized into like civilian spaces, the more we can kind of identify how to how to expose this. I think what Alexia said, it's exposing like these things at every level is really important. That's all I'm going to say on that for now.
Okay, so I'm wondering, I'm also calling on other organizers to see how are we doing for time? Do we still have some time for, I think there's 2 more questions in chat that were asked. Is that fine? I think so, yes, right? So I myself also inquired with Lil from Galag about the choice of strategy. So you mentioned that you've done so much going up to the Paris Air Show, and one of the tactics that you chose to use was the lawsuit, the multiple lawsuits that you mentioned. And I was wondering how did that work out? What were the rulings on there, if there were any? And did this legal tactic also allow you to expand as Galag? Did it allow you to accumulate public attention also?
Yes, so very quickly, because I don't know if we have still that much time. The lawsuits weren't really effective, like in a legal sense. They did not. We did not earn any money because of this. The Paris Air Show has not been like forbidden. However, it really allowed us to gain public attention especially in legacy media, and in like huge newspaper from like center left, and also on purely informational media, because it's really a big event, and it shows that something doesn't work. And so I don't know if it helped us mobilize on the D-Day and in the demonstration, but what's sure is that it helped us retain public attention, and it breaks the unanimity, I think, and that's what's helping. I think we're going to do it again for Milipol, and if we try and disrupt other arms, where we're going to do it again because of this. Because it brings public attention. Just quickly.
Thank you so much. I'll keep that in mind. So I'm just looking through to see if I'm missing anything I wouldn't want to. We have a couple more minutes for questions if people still have some, or if any of the speakers still want to share anything that came up that they would still like to let people know. Okay, so I'm hearing from some comrades that Alexia maybe still has some sharing to do. Am I wrong? Am I right, Alexia?
Just a little bit of sharing because it was mentioned earlier that the need to expose these weapons companies. So I think I just want to share a little bit. I won't take too long. It's just about the Australian government's narrative about their weapons support to Israel. They say that they are not sending weapons to Israel, or they're not sending machines of war to Israel, but they are sending weapons parts. So that creates the distinction that they are not very responsible for the genocide in Palestine because they're not really sending ammunition or fighter jets, but they're sending the weapons parts and the parts for the fighter jets to be manufactured and built that are being used to bomb Palestine, to bomb Gaza. And another thing as well is in the Philippines. There was a recent, I think September of this year, because of the BDS boycott call to boycott these Israeli companies. The Philippines was pressured to stop all the new deals with Israeli companies, but it doesn't count. This doesn't count the existing deals with Israel. So the existing deals will continue. So it's another, narrative that we need to inspect and investigate further. Apart from, to go deeper than the surface level and expose their narratives. And while we're on the topic of, of weapons manufacturing, the United States is planning to open up a weapons depot in Subic Bay, which is a former U.S. naval base in the Philippines. We have kicked out U.S. bases in 1992, but now they have come back through the Visiting Forces Agreement and the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, skirting these constitutional laws about the presence of foreign troops on Philippine soil. So while they cannot station U.S. bases, they can station U.S. troops inside Philippine military bases. So that's their legal loophole. So this is a dangerous, development, especially with the development of the planned weapons depot in Subic Bay, which we must, raise awareness on and expose them for wherever they are. And again, like I said, we must inspect and investigate these narratives for what they are and expose them to the world, basically. So thank you.
I completely agree. Thank you so much for sharing this about Subic Bay. I wasn't aware. So I heard also that Yasmin has a final sharing, because after all, we are also here today to let people know about the Arms Fair in the Netherlands that's coming up next Thursday. So Yasmin, take it away.
Hi, everyone. I just want to, firstly, I really want to thank Bayan and Galag for sharing on this. This is we're very excited to hear about the international campaigns. We have started this quite recently, only in the last, this is our third year, and we are only 5 days away from the mobilization, and it's going to be, and so it's really inspiring to have this kind of sharing. Our creative, our cultural workers are busy making an effigy. This year it's going to be a piggy bank. Last year it was a Cerberus. So follow us online and see those great creations. And we hope that we'll have a good confrontation. And I really also just hope that listening to all of these, we really learned a lot of broad tactics and how to do mass education and the opportunities. And I really see opportunities for us to build together, especially on research, because there's, when we think about the supply chains and where they're going, I think we all have a role to play in putting together the pieces of this puzzle of the global war industry and the supply chain. And that's really I think important for us in strengthening this, because as we can see, this is only growing and increasing. This is an increasing threat, and we are going to face increased repression. So I really just want to give a message to say, like, if you're in the Netherlands, come to the protest on Thursday. It will be all day, so you have a lot of time to catch it. In Rotterdam at Ahoy. If you're not in the Netherlands, then just show us some support online and just follow what we're doing. And if you have feedback, we're very happy to learn from you. It would be interesting to know if NL is mobilizing more police force. Short answer, yes. In every way, there's a lot of discussion around that, but yes. There's also a highly policed neighborhood in Rotterdam. So yes, we are excited to see people on the street, and we're excited to continue working with you and strengthen our anti-imperialist war movement as we face a future of fascism. Let's get through this together. And see you on Thursday. Goodbye.
Yes, I am also very much looking forward to seeing all of you comrades who can make it next Thursday. I want to once again thank every single contributor. I learned so much today. My notes pad is huge. And I would like to now hand the word over to Comrade Cody from IOPS, who will close us off for today.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Aletta. This is, like Aletta said, my name is Cody. I'm actually also with the Resist US-led War Movement Global Secretariat. And to everyone who came here today, we just want to give you a huge thank you. This is one of the most extensive sharings that we've done between campaigns against arms fairs and the war industry through the Resist US-led War Network. As Resist, we started this campaign that we called Cut Ties with War Profiteers over 3 years ago. And since then, it has brought us into contact with so many different organizations that have been taking up these campaigns on the ground, confronting the war industry, showing up and getting in the face of the war profiteers and the imperialists wherever they rear their heads. And it has shown us just how extensive our networks can be, and how powerful we can be when we unite our forces together. So over the years, as we've heard just here, we've learned many different lessons. And it has led us to a very exciting point, where Resist US-led War Movement, we are going to be relaunching soon our Cut Ties with War Profiteers campaign. This sharing here is one step towards revamping this campaign and really expanding what we're able to do together. Since up to this point, we have connected with members of Resist as well as partner organizations of ours in going up against arms fairs from Melbourne to Rotterdam to Paris to Ottawa, to Seattle, to San Diego, and many other places. But what we've learned is that, and what I think was really well mentioned during our conversation here, is that going up against these arms fairs is just one part of the work. These fairs are places where these companies, these weapons manufacturers, come together to sell their profits to some of the most horrific genocidal states that exist in the world today. But there's so many other ways to go after the companies themselves. And in a lot of ways, when we say the war industry, we're actually not just talking about weapons companies. We're talking about tech companies. We're talking about mining companies. We're talking about shipping companies. These are all part of the weapons supply chain. I think that was another really important thing that was mentioned during the conversation today, is that going up against the war industry means going up against every single pressure point that lies along the supply chain. You can actually learn more about the weapons supply chain and our analysis about fighting back against it in a primer that we have on our website against weapons transnational corporations. So I'm mentioning all of this because this is what we're all trying to take into consideration as we get ready to relaunch the Cut Ties with War Profiteers campaign. We want to expand the actions against, again, all of those different pressure points. It means continuing to confront the arms shows and the weapons trade fairs in the imperialist countries, in the global north, where they're actually selling their products. But it also means linking up with workers' organizations, peasant organizations, indigenous peoples' organizations, women's organizations, particularly in the global south, that are fighting back against the extractive parts of the supply chain, the mining areas, the militarization of fishing and rural communities. All of this together, all of us united in struggle, really is what it means to cut ties with war profiteers. And even more than just cutting ties, we are cutting every single institutional support line that this industry has, because ultimately what we are confronting is the imperialist system itself. That's what lies at the root of war profiteering. That's what lies at the root of wars of aggression themselves. And that's what I really liked about what all of the speakers talked about today in their own way. So how are we in the Resist US-Led War movement aiming to bring, to widen the scope of actions that we're trying to take? I think of it in the way that we in the Resist US-Led War movement organize ourselves. We rely on 3 different pillars, and you can see all of those pillars playing out in how we're trying to expand this campaign. On the one hand, we are a campaign center. As you heard from all of our speakers today, the power of our movements relies on campaigns on the ground, directly mobilizing communities, choosing our targets and going up against them one at a time. And this campaign really aims to help bring more and more of these campaigns on the ground together. So if you're listening in here and you've been inspired by something that you've heard from the different campaigns mentioned, and you have a campaign in your community, or you're interested in starting one, we really encourage you to share with us, because we need to expand this work we're doing together. The second thing, and I'm going to tell you how to get involved after I finish up my description here. The second thing we rely on as Resist is we are a network. So all of our campaigns that are expanding on the ground, it's instances like this where we get to bring all of ourselves together and share these lessons and plan out and have coordinated days of action across the world. It really takes a network to show how each of our actions, each of our campaigns supports each other, and we can fight arm in arm. And finally, we are a resource center. And that means that we're looking to provide tools and other resources for our members and for the partners that we work with in order to expand the work of their campaigns, to sharpen our analysis, and to better understand our tactics together. So we are taking up more and more research projects to really understand the full extent that these companies take. We are trying to produce primers, toolkits, other pieces of propaganda and education that we can all use together. So with all of these together, we're trying to really, again, I've said it many times, expand our understanding of what it means to truly fight back against the war industry. And we're going to do that together, because when we fight together, we win together. So if you're not already connected with Resist US-Led War movement, please connect with us. You can see our link on the screen that you can use to join up. This is bit.ly/cuttieswithwar. That'll get you to see the campaign page that is on our website. And our website in general is resistusledwarmovement.com. just shared in the link here in the chat here. And it's on that website that you can actually sign up and join the Resist US-Led War movement. You can sign our manifesto. That's all you need to do to become a member. If you agree with what's written on our manifesto about why we must fight against US-led war and why we must achieve a just and lasting peace, then you can become a member. And from there, we can get in touch with you and we can talk more about what our campaigns could look like together and what your campaign could look like within Resist US-Led War movement. And please email us if you want to get directly connected right now. We'll throw the email address into the chat here too, for everyone to see. So thank you again so much for all of our speakers, to everyone who came, everyone who joined the conversation. As always, there's two things that we come together for here. That is fighting against US-led war, whatever it looks like, wherever it exists, and achieving a just and lasting peace by any means necessary. When we fight together, we win together. So thank you, everyone. Let's keep fighting, and long live international solidarity.